Hey everybody, welcome back. Today my guest is Andrew Motiwalla, founder and CEO of The Good Life Abroad, a company built to help people live with purpose, connection, and intention beyond the roles that once defined them. Andrew has spent decades traveling the world, starting with the Peace Corps, leading meaningful lives and travel experiences with families, students, and now adults 55 plus, offering immersive community life in places like Lisbon, Paris, Barcelona, and Florence. Today, we're going to be talking about how intentional life design, whether that's through travel, community, or even just the choices that we make, invites us to stretch joy, refine identity, and live with meaning, not momentum. So whether you're thinking about that midlife crisis, you're pivoting to new purpose, or simply want to live differently, this conversation will help you to see what's next more clearly. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Every moment tests you. Every action defines you. This is the prestigious initiative where mindset becomes muscle and character becomes legacy. I'm Chris Bean, martial artist, coach, and relentless believer in growth. If you're here to sharpen your edge, lead with integrity, and build a life that echoes beyond your years, you're home. You can find the podcast on social media at PrestigiousPod. You can find me at Chris Bean Official, and the email for the podcast is prestigiousinitiative@gmail.com. Now, Andrew, why would somebody want to listen to our conversation here today?
Well, as you hinted at, The Good Life Abroad, our company is more about 55 and older, but the same principles apply to anyone who's intentional about designing their ideal life. And whether you're getting started in your career or you're halfway through and you have some big questions about where you want to go, or you're towards retirement or semi-retirement, these principles affect everyone.
Now, Andrew, your career in travel began with the Peace Corps and then evolved over the decades. Can you bring us in? How did your early experiences shape your view of life purpose and community?
Well, the Peace Corps experience sort of injected me with the love, not just of travel, but of fully immersing myself in a place versus sort of skimming across the purpose. As a Peace Corps volunteer, I lived for 2 years in a village in Honduras in Central America. And I realized that I was having a completely different experience of Honduras than anyone who kind of came through for a week to see like the best of Honduras in a week. And that stuck with me. And then it got me into sort of immersive travel as an industry. But I was always getting pulled in many directions when you're starting out in your career. Sometimes there's just the practical necessities of like, I need to make money, I need to pay off student loans or whatever. So you find yourself torn. And at some point, pretty early on, I realized that I needed to design my life the way I wanted it if I'm going to be truly happy. Because I took a couple jobs that weren't for me, and I found not just like, oh, I don't like going to work. I literally physically would shut down, and I couldn't even do the job very well. And I'm a reasonably intelligent person, thinking I can do pretty much anything I put my mind to. I would shut down and became really bad at doing certain things, and other things that I resonated with me became excellent at and flourished at. And so that then propelled me in the direction of, okay, you can actually build a life around this thing that you like, around cultural immersion and immersive travel.
Right, because I think a lot of times people get pushed or maybe nudged or even sometimes shoved into careers that their parents want for them or society wants for them or they think themselves that they might want. Then you get to college and you start taking those classes and you realize, I actually don't want to do this at all. And I think that's why we live in a time where there are so many people right now that have degrees from college, from prestigious universities, and they're working in fields that are completely opposite or completely counterintuitive to what they went to school for, because you get pushed in sort of that direction. So how did you, beyond those experiences that you had at work, how did you know that designing a life that lined up with something that you want to do was what you wanted? And maybe the prior question should be, how did you find out what you wanted so that you could have that life that you wanted?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's a major pivot point in my life, and I can point to you very clearly what it was. I was in the Peace Corps, but before that, I was in college and I studied abroad. I lived in South America, and it was a really cool
Can
experience.
can you tell us how did you get connected with the Peace Corps, and why was that a step that you even took? Because I know that's not
Okay.
something that a lot of people do or think about doing. So bring us in, let us know about that too.
Yeah. I found that people in my, not just in my line of work, but in people who work in international development or international education, there's in everyone's life, there's some event that turns them off onto some weird path, right? Like it's not normal. It's just not a normal thing. Like, oh, I work like delivering food aid in Somalia. That's just like not a thing that you just grew up dreaming as a little kid. One day I'll be, maybe you will, right? But so for me, it goes back to study abroad, actually. So I studied abroad. You might ask, why did you study abroad? What drove you? I was kind of just miserable in college. I've been partying really hard for my first couple of years, probably wasting a lot of money, doing pretty badly in school, not really focused. I kept changing my major, thinking that I would find happiness in the right major, right? But there's something more fun. There was something more fundamental missing. So I was so sad actually, and I said, "All right, I got to get out of here." But my parents aren't going to let me just drop out of college. So I went to the study abroad office. I was like, "Hey, Japan seems cool. I want to do that program." They're like, "Yeah, your grades are not good enough. The Japanese do not want you in that program. Like, we have this other program you can go to in South America." And I did that, and it was in that study abroad program where I completely just fell in love with like indigenous cultures
Mm.
and learning about anthropology and all these things I didn't even know existed. I didn't know anthropology was a thing you could do. You don't learn that in high school necessarily, at least not where I went to high school. And so that study abroad experience got me really into just get me out in the world. So then I came back after that semester abroad, and all I could think about, it was now junior year, and all I could think about was, how do I get out again? That was great. I want to do more of this international stuff. And my college roommate was like, you should join the Peace Corps. And I didn't know what the Peace Corps is. My parents are fresh off the boat immigrants from two different continents. They didn't know what the Peace Corps was. Um, but this guy was like, you should just do it. And the recruiter came to our college. I sat down with him. I applied. I didn't fully know what I was getting into, but I knew it was a way to get out of the country and the US government was going to pay for it. I'm just being honest about this sort of the things that kind of stumbled my way into the Peace Corps. But it was in the Peace Corps. Well, one, I learned what we do, and I'm really proud of the US Peace Corps. I think it's an amazing institution. But along the way, I had this one project I worked on. I don't. If I'm getting too far on a tangent, let me know.
No, you're doing great.
But
I like this.
I ended up doing something that wasn't an official Peace Corps project. My job was to work with the farming community, the peasants, to protect the old growth forests in this rural area of Honduras. But instead of teaching them about sustainable agriculture, because from Chicago, what do I know about agriculture and about we got to protect the trees for the air. It was all very abstract. I ended up starting a business with these guys where we would protect the forest from burning because we would harvest the pine cones. And the pine cones, I made a connection to a guy in the capital who would buy them, put them in a centrifuge, take the seeds out, and ship seeds from old growth pine trees to US nurseries.
Hmm.
It's a little convoluted, I know. But the point is that he would only buy these pine cones if they came from trees that were not burned, because if they're burned, pine cone opens, the seeds fall out, they're worthless.
Hmm.
So we created basically a market solution to a social problem. And that stuck with me. So I went home, back to my parents' house in Chicago after 2 years in the Peace Corps, and before that in South America with study abroad. And I just sort of laid there, like, now what do I do? I'm back in reality. And my dad said, okay, son, you had your fun changing your majors a million times in college. You wanted to go volunteer. He did not get this whole volunteer concept, but now you're back and you're an adult. You need to go get a job. You are not staying in this house if you're not working. And I said, well, what do I do? And he said, go to a headhunter. They will put you on interviews. So I did that. I didn't know what else to do. Fast forward, And I'm sitting in the conference room of the American Cup Company in suburban Chicago. Andrew, I'm happy to offer you a job selling paper cups, Midwest territory. And I said, ma'am, I can't take this job. I got to tell you about what I've been doing. I was doing this thing in Honduras, and I was in the Andes. I was learning Quechua, and she said to me, "Why are you here? You should be like in the United Nations." I mean, this is a nice lady from suburban Chicago. I don't think she realized I'm not exactly cut out to be in the UN at that point. But the concept, what she planned is like, yeah, why are you here? But I didn't know any better. My parents weren't pitching crazy ideas. They're like, yeah, go sell cups, do whatever. They came to this country with nothing. They took jobs that they hated their entire lives, and they did it for me. So that kind of blew my mind. And then it said, all right, how do we actually work in this field?
Okay. So that's how you got from being in college, falling into the Peace Corps, going through doing all of that, and then establishing, okay, this is what I don't want to do. This is where I find passion. This is where I find energy. This is what I want to do. Then you started to do that. Now, all right, with that kind of in mind, with that being the next steps for you, what is your core idea behind your business, The Good Life Abroad? And how does that differ from what other people do as travel tourism?
Yeah. So the core idea of the good life abroad is essentially that many people their whole lives have this dream. I would go love to go live abroad. Maybe not permanently, but for some period of time. And they often say, I'm going to do that in retirement because I'm working too much before that. But they don't. They don't do that. And when we had this idea, I put out just a post on my Facebook, and I said, "Hey, who's wanted to do this but hasn't done it?" And then I got like 100 people, like, "Oh my God!" And it's my age, right? As people older, we still use Facebook. They're really active on it. And I sent them a survey. I said, "Can you just take a survey? Why didn't you do it?" And there was a lot of what happens if I get hurt or have a medical issue? What if, I'm alone, I'm single, lonely? What if I'm lonely? I don't speak the language, you name it, right? There's a million things that people worry about. And I thought, how can we solve this to just make it easy for people to live out their dream, right? I get it. People, all these things are overwhelming. We don't do anything. We paralyze. Say, you know what? Whatever. It's a nice dream. So to solve that, as I really drilled into the data and all the pain points, the solution came up is community. If you have community, it makes it fun. You're not going to be lonely if you have people around you that have similar motivation or intention to be there. It's a little safe, feels safer at least because you're like, oh, I have like people that do stuff. We can go out at night. We can go to a club or a bar or a restaurant, and like we're going to walk back to the same neighborhood, and they'll go to their apartment. And then community also meaning our community managers, a local support person who's putting on activities and events for people to come together. It's not a tour. It's not scheduling your days. But throughout the month, we have a bunch of different activities that are fun, like cooking classes, painting classes, happy hours, lunches. And then those are moments that come together as a community, form connection. We do try to facilitate that connection. And then you start to come out these friendships, right? And that's so it's almost the opposite of a tour. We come together for lunch, but we don't get on a bus and do three more things that day. It's it's independent experience where we form connections with other people in your community that allow you to have an even more enriching, fun experience. And it's actually more joyful when you share these experiences with others versus just doing them on your own. That's one of the things we found too.
And okay, so when you're going to these places, on average, let's say how long are you staying in one town before you move to the next
So
town?
our minimum stay for our signature program is 1 month.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it's you're committing to a month of living abroad and living like a local in that we give you your own apartment. It's a nice modern apartment, but it's different from like a hotel. We give you like a starter roll of paper towel, toilet paper, or soap. But after that, you're going to the local market. You're buying your things. You're buying your food to cook. We have some meals that are included, like different parties and events we have. But you're you're on your own. And we teach you, we do an orientation. We teach you how to take the public transportation. We even give you like the Metro card or to get you started. Okay, you see how this is how it runs, the bus, it connects to the subway. This is where the grocery stores are. These are the homewares. So unlike a tour, we're more trying to empower you to live on your own. In fact, when we have activities, we don't, there's no bus that picks you up. It's here's a link to Google Map on Google Maps. Click it and it'll teach you how to get to where you need to go to meet the group for whatever we're doing. And for people who are getting older, that might sound scary, but it's a dream that many people have had. And once they do it and they realize they're capable of doing it, it creates so much confidence in them.
Okay. The really interesting thing about this, I think, Andrew, is I remember a study that I read a while ago. It's been some time, so I'm going to get some pieces of this wrong, but essentially was they took people from, and I understand this is not what you're doing. I get that, but I want to make this connection. They took people that were living in a senior citizen home and they recreated a town that would look like it would be in their past. So if they're from the
Mm.
50s, they created a town it would be like from the 50s, and they had these people go and live there, and they got to see the effects of this. And the effects was essentially it was almost like they started to de-age. They started to be more independent. They were doing more things. They were up walking. It that connection for them was what they needed in order to kind of break them out of that shell. And I get that that's different, but the connection I want to make here is you're taking the people that are 55 plus, and so there are in a certain lifestyle that's almost kind of locked in. Like you're pretty much day to day is doing the same kind of thing, you know, and you're breaking that, and it's almost like they're going back to what it was like when they were first stepping out of the house on their own when they're 18, 19, 20 years old. They're going out, they're getting an apartment, they're figuring these things out from this like they had to do then. And okay, so I set all that up and I say all that because I want to ask this question. Do you find that people who do this, they feel like they have more energy as they're going to do these things when they're on location, sort of say, as compared to where they were at home?
Absolutely. In fact, they have to in one sense, in
Hmm.
that you step out of your apartment as a 20-year-old, an older 20-year-old, and everything is just new. It's like all this new information. Okay, I just have to be alert and start processing. Okay, oh, they drive on the other side of the street. Oh my gosh, there's bike lanes everywhere. So they're forced to just kind of learn, which is a great thing as you get older, right? Forcing yourself to learn. And then they're also, as you said, they kind of have their life set by that time, right? They maybe live in the suburbs or in a gated community or 55 plus community or wherever. Suddenly they find themselves living in the center of a European city. And like that alone takes some getting used to, right? Everything's a little bit smaller. You're not going to Costco and loading up your Costco size version. You're going to the market every 2 days, buying fresh produce, cooking it, smaller refrigerator. Um, so it takes some adaptation as well, right? The adaptation part is important. And then I like to think of it as like positive peer pressure. When we were 20 or even in high school, right? Like, come on, man, all the cool kids, we're going to for these our folks, it's we're going to the jazz club at night, or the supper club, or come on, let's go see the thing at the local university that's happening. Now that we live like locals, we can check out these local events. And so you have positive peer pressure as well to get out. And you could stay at home and watch Netflix, or we could go out and do something. And we're only here for a month, so let's take advantage of this time. So they are definitely, whether they want to or not. Now, the beauty of this program too, it's independent. So, in fact, a lot of our people they do the siesta, the midday, so they can now have the energy to go out and do things more at a European time frame.
Well, and okay, so that's an interesting counterpoint that you make because uh, unlike in the States, a lot of times these other locations that I'm sure you go to, they have siesta times midday where all the shops close and like there's nobody that's working because you're at home, you're resting. That is your time to take a nap before you go back for the afternoon rush. Am I right on that?
Absolutely, and they're closed often. A lot of places on Sundays.
Hmm?
People are like, oh, why aren't they open? Oh, no, it's a day of rest. It's a day to be with family. No, we're just closed.
Yeah. Okay. Now, as you are bringing people on this, so you said the shortest time was 1 month. What's the longer time? What's the longest time?
Well, because North Americans can stay in the EU Schengen area for up to 90 days, within any 180-day period. That's a visa without a visa. So we say 1 to 3 months, up to 90 days.
Okay. Have you ever had times where somebody just wants to stay or they end up coming back stateside and then they move back to that location?
Yeah, I would say about 15% of our clients
Hmm.
are actually thinking about becoming an expat and just making the move. And we are like their scouting trip. Like, let's go
Oh,
this in sort of a supported, controlled, vetted environment. And we'll check out the neighborhoods while we're there, the traffic patterns, the noise, all these things. Maybe they'll connect or we'll connect them to a local realtor to go visit properties. And then they come back and make the move, or they realize, no, no, that's not the right town and we should try a different town.
okay. Does anybody, I mean, you're there for a month. Does anybody ever feel the need or actually do go get a job while they're there and work?
No, our
No.
folks are they're done
Okay.
working. Well,
That's,
or some of them are kind of into work, are working remotely often or
okay.
part. So a lot of our folks are like it's 55 plus, but they're on boards of nonprofits or they're consulting or they've got a family business they're somewhat still into. But what we do have is some people who say, I'd like to volunteer while I'm here.
Oh,
And our local staff can help facilitate that.
okay. So you have staff that's there on location and that's like your connecting party. So you get to connect with them about different events that are going on and they kind of get to help to set that up and connect with your people who are participating in the travel.
Yeah, we call them our community manager because they're managing the community. But what they also do is they meet with each person one on one at the beginning of the program, right? It's a cohort program. So everyone arrives on the same day and then orientation. And then we meet with them one on one, say, what do you want to get out of this month? And that's the beautiful thing because everyone's journey looks different. It's like a blank canvas. And some people want to get brush off that high school French and try to bring it back 50 years later. Other people want to get into food or they're history buffs or art. And so then we try to help them make a plan of how to accomplish that, how to paint, make that painting. So for some people, volunteering is part of that.
Okay. Community is something you've talked about a couple times already. What are some things, I mean, yeah, you connect together, you have that meeting in the beginning, you have these things that they can go to, but what do you have any key insight to things that you're doing that build that community with an intentional side of it? So I know that the building community with especially with a intentional aspect with peers is super helpful for the things that you're doing. It makes that more meaningful, makes that transition nice. What are some things that you're doing in order to facilitate that community building?
Yeah. So the big thing is to understand what people's interests and motivations are, or their curiosities, right? At the very least, I think people who thrive on our program have some curiosity. They're there to explore some topic or something. And so it's our job, our community manager's job, to try to learn what that is. So on the one-on-one meetings, and also in the first day, we do the orientation in the morning. We meet again in the evening for a welcome party, usually like on a rooftop bar, beautiful view, some food, but we'll do some activities to get to understand what people's interests and affinities are. Simple things like if you form a circle, like, does anyone here play a musical instrument? Step in the circle, right? Oh, wow, there's like some music lovers here, right? Does anyone here do any painting or sketching, right? And so we're making note of all these things. And then we use WhatsApp. You're familiar with WhatsApp, the
Yeah.
text message platform. They have a community feature, right, which is perfect for us. And the community feature has one channel for announcements. That's one way down to the group. But then it has everyone in the community can make their own subgroups, like affinity groups. And so we encourage people, and sometimes we'll even precede it with some community affinities that we know people have, right? Like solo travelers, foodies. But then the group says, "Oh yeah, like I just saw that you love like art galleries." Like they'll make a group, and then these people connect around shared affinities. And then our community manager is scanning what's happening in town and going like looking at the university or different cultural institutions, say, aha, there's like this art gallery opening. You guys might want, so they're suggesting things based on what the composition of the group is. And then that you can, those people will be like, oh yeah, let's go to that thing. Why don't we meet for dinner ahead of time? And then we'll do. And so suddenly that community starts to take on a life of its own based on all these shared interests. And it goes from a program where we just have a few things scattered throughout the month to a very full month of people going off and connecting with local events and local cultural things. Um, and this is what people love about our program, right? It's like you're very much not alone. In fact, you found your tribe of people who want to go find cool local things. Um, and for solo travelers, you can imagine they love it because there's built-in community. But even for couples, we got a guy in Barcelona. He created a group for cathedral lovers, and he created a group for sports bars. And I said, hey, you're joking. I mean, come on, you're just playing with our, stuff. He goes, no, no, no. I'm here because my wife, all she wants to do when we go to Europe is go to churches. And all I want to do is go to the sports bars. I could care less about the churches. So this is why we're here. So she can have her fun with people and I can have my fun with my people.
And I have to imagine, and I think that this is probably helped along because of the location that you're in, and the environment change bolsters this. But the friendships, the connections that are made, the friendships that are there are lasting well after just that month or 3 month stay at wherever you're at, because of the different things that you do. Again, I think back to like the friends and the connections that you make in college. We still all have some sort of connection with those people because we were all going through life at that certain time, all going through the same things. And they were very fundamental change that helped us to be who we are. When you kind of travel back and you go through that again, the connections that you make with the people that are going through those same type of things are very strong. And I imagine they extend well after that travel ends.
Well, exactly. And it has to do with the creation of identity. So the one thing that everyone's going through at the same time is retirement, essentially, whether they're fully retired or semi-retired. But with that comes a lot of other things. So I'm no longer now the accountant. I don't work as an accountant. I used to be an accountant. I'm not the guy who lives on the corner, the neighbor, because I downsized when the kids, left home, and now I live in a condo somewhere. I'm not the parent at the PTA because the kids are long. Like those are like often the pillars of one's identity and community. So now what is it? Now that I moved to this townhouse or condo and the kids aren't there and I don't work. And so what we find is the people who come on this program, they discover their tribe, because the thing that everyone has in common is shared core value. And that core value is a deep appreciation for other cultures. It's important to their life, right? Because who on earth would want to go on a vacation and stay in one place for an entire month? It's not normal, right? It's not what people do for vacation. They travel, they tour, they cruise, whatever. So this is like a unique subset of people who really want to go deep and appreciate the beauty of the day-to-day routines, the different form of life. And they're like, this is my tribe. And now these friendships form, and we have entire sessions, which is just alumni who have connected and said, oh, I love the type of people this attracts. And we've got a whole session full now of alumni doing these things. And that's their tribe. And they're going to just keep doing that. And we hear it all the time. Andrew, now that I've discovered this form of travel, this is what I'm going to do with my years that I can physically do this.
Mm. I have to ask, because you talked about doing a video on their first day. Do you also do a video on the last day?
No, it's a great idea. That's actually a really good idea. No, we don't even do, you're right. We don't even really do like an exit interview. We just do a survey, like a web form. But we don't really do, and I guess when they get home, we do send them an email saying, if you'd like to offer feedback on your experience, we would love to schedule a time for a Zoom. We can just get feedback and we'll capture that. And we use that feedback as a way of continuous improvement on the programming side.
Well, and I'm thinking you have that first, and I this is just how my brain works. I'm thinking you have that first intro video, but then you also have that exit video still on location, and that is your marketing material for new people.
Yeah, or you send the invoice over for the marketing side. I love it. That's great. That's actually really, we should totally do that. I
Yeah, I
mean,
mean, testimonials are great, especially and the cool thing is if you can compare and contrast the beginning of the trip versus the ending of the trip. I think that I mean the trip is there. The trip is magical for its own right, and all the things are going to happen, I'm sure, all the time. And having that, and of course, you get to strategically design or make it however you want. But that would be I think a cool way, kind of baked into the program, so that person can see the beginning and end. But also,
yeah,
again, that's marketing material for you.
yeah, and it would be easy to do.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Good. Now,
thank you.
can you tell me about the about joy span as a concept? How do you define it, and why is it so important?
So joy span is a term that Dr. Carrie Burnett came up with. She wrote a book called Joy Span, and that concept that we know what lifespan is, the number of years you live, and health span, the number of years you have health. But what are the number of years you have joy in your life is a critical measure. And what we find, and what she finds in her book, so she's a doctor, there's a lot of scientific stuff in there, is basically if you have more joy in your life, you can actually also extend your health span, like happiness and health have some correlation. And but for us at the Good Life Abroad, focusing on travel for people 55 and older, the concepts around joy span are like this is it. This is the pillar on which we built our program. And so the fundamental idea is you can create joy in your life. There are practices you can do. You don't have to be 55. You don't have to travel abroad. There's things everyone can do to create and build joy in their lives. And we've just taken those principles and applied it to travel. And so, for example, one of them is like just grow, learn new things. It can be a skill, a hobby, anything. But when you travel, as we talked about earlier, like everything is new. Right? You're just constantly learning. You're learning the local phrases in the local language. You're learning how the public transportation. Everything is learning. Another thing she talks about is connection. This is obvious in terms of what we're doing with community, connecting with other people. But if you're not traveling, joining a club, volunteering, or putting yourself out there and connecting with other humans versus sort of isolating yourself at home. Um, Adaptation. She talks about this is like pushing yourself a little out of your comfort zone and then being able to adapt to that. Don't break yourself, right? But pushing yourself so you have to adapt and you grow as a result. So with our program, suddenly I'm like everything is different way of life. From the physical space of the European apartment to physically being in a European city center, you're adapting. But then when hopefully you're just pushed a little bit, right? But at the end of that month, like, wow, I adapted to that. And now the world is opening up versus the world closing in on you, which often happens to people as they get older. The world feels smaller and smaller. Another thing she talks about is giving, right? Giving, it could be volunteering, it could be giving to yourself, it could be philanthropy, but it could just be like being kind to people. And when you travel, I don't know if you have experience, but like you're almost a little bit more vulnerable and you tend to just be nicer to the local because you're like, I'm a child here, I don't know how things work, and you're nicer to other travelers. Like you meet people and you share things that you might not have shared if you just met them at the grocery store in your hometown. So anyway, these concepts um, are things that you can do at home, learning, connecting, adapting, growing. But in the travel space, it's like on steroids, right? It's just like everything is heightened. And there's another book that we reread. It's called The Good Life. It's actually a little bit of inspiration for the company, but it's a study of happiness. And what that finds, and also this joy span, is when you do this in community, when you're sharing this and connecting with others, it like everything amplifies, right? So community is so important because you can do these things by yourself, but when you do it in community, the joy that's created is amplified, and that's everything for us.
And so,
We're literally trying to redefine retirement for people.
right, and what you've done is you've taken that joy span and the good life and kind of connected those dots and built the travel experiences to have those things, not by default, because sometimes travel has those things, but you've put those in, you've injected those in on purpose, so they're getting them with thoughtful consideration as opposed to happenstance.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. I think that I'm not alone in this, but I think that a lot of times people, when they think of traveling, especially traveling abroad, there are certain fears that come with that. So what are some common fears or hesitations people bring to having extended travel or even life design? And then what are some steps that you and your team do to help them to move past those?
Yeah. The big one with people as we get older is health concerns. For ourselves and at a certain period in our life, we have aging parents that are quite aged, and that is important, right? These are important relationships and important to take care of our health. And so that's a big one. And so what we can do in terms of your health is we have a whole risk mitigation, risk management plan in place. So if something were to happen to you, our local community manager, first of all, we include medical insurance while you're with us. Like that's just covered for everyone. Secondly, if something happened, we have a whole network of English speaking medical professionals based on the severity of whatever you have. So if you get sick, if you go on your own and something happens to you, hurt you roll an ankle on a cobblestone, for example, that's not the time you want to try to figure out the medical that needs to be thought through well in advance. And that's what one of the things we provide is like, no, we thought it through. We know exactly what to do, protocols in place. Um, Another thing, well, and then in terms of like aging parents, for things that could happen back at home, right? People book with us often like 9 months, 12 months in advance. But at our age, since we get older, things happen that we never planned. Oh, I need a new hip. I didn't know I needed that 6 months ago. Or, oh, I'm gonna be a grandparent. Didn't know that 12 months ago. And so one of the things we try to do is also have just a flexible cancellation policy. So it makes it easy for you to, oh, life happens. We understand that. We know who we're working with. We can roll that over to a future, next year if you need, or if you cancel in a certain time, we'll just refund you your money. No big deal, because that's who our audience is. Um, Other things, so those are very practical. I think at a psychological level, at a higher level, you know, I think one of the big tensions is between the status quo, being very comfortable, right, and this new optimized or this new life I'm trying to create for myself, just the unknowns that could come with it. And so at a high level, I think that happens to a lot of people who are trying to shape their life because it's very comfortable. We've optimized for what the status quo, right? Um, so what we can do now, we're going back to the good life abroad specifically, is we're not going to convince you, but what we have is this Facebook group, private Facebook group of our past travelers and present travelers. And it's thousands of people in there. And they are just going on and on about how this has changed their life and how this is an amazing way to travel. And you go join this group and like, oh my gosh, that person looks like me. That's, a 60-year-old from Texas who now is going off and doing 3 months in the spring and 3 months in the fall with the Good Life Abroad. And they could see themselves and they could talk to each other. How did you handle it? What about your pet? What about your, grandkids? And so that is something we just can facilitate that conversation.
Yeah, okay, as you're talking about that, I'm wondering how many, or maybe even a percentage of your, how many of your clients are repeat clients? Meaning they do one trip with you and they come back stateside and they said, "Man, I want to do that again. Let's go again." How many times does that happen?
Yeah, that number is growing considerably every year because we have more travelers and then that alumni number grows. It's right now roughly 35%
Mm,
of our total travel.
okay. Wow.
Our goal, we think it could be 50-50. We think it'll be at some point half the people just keep coming back and half the people are new.
Now, as these trips are happening, are you there personally on each one of them, or how does that work? What is your role in that?
I wish if I could split myself. No, we have programs in about 21 cities across Europe, and they're just sort of going um, almost all year, not all year in all the places. So my role, I'm the founder. It was my idea, and I oversee. I have a team in Europe that handles all the operations, as you can imagine. There's a lot of real estate happening, right? We're subleasing apartments on behalf of people in 21 cities, different times of the year. So there's a whole real estate operation happening there. And then we have people physically in all the cities, our local community managers that are there that we manage. And they're about providing the most amazing experience for our guests, creating that community, fostering connections, and helping people make the most of their month in Europe. And then we've got our US side, and I oversee them. Everyone from the moment you call our office just with a question to once you've booked, like I said, it's 9 to 12 months before they actually go. And in that process, there's not just like, oh, support, but there's actually a fair amount of education that has to happen because people are used to being tourists. They know how to go and land in a place and run around and see as many sites as possible. They're not used to like how to live there, right? Or if they've been on a tour, they know the bus will just take them places. Get on, get off, check in the hotels. So there's a lot of education, especially with the 55 plus audience. What is WhatsApp? How do I use it? How do I connect with other? With my phone work in Europe? What about Google Maps? Wait, there's no Wi-Fi in the street. No. Well, what is Wi-Fi? What is a cellular connection? Like, there's a lot of things, so there's an education process. We try to work with each traveler during that pre-departure, and that is a whole team of people that does that as well.
Okay. So I have to ask, how often do you actually get to go out and visit those places? That being the thing that launched this whole thing. What about you?
Yeah, so I tend to go out for a month in the spring and a month in the fall, and I'll visit a bunch of programs. I'll be gone essentially the month of April. I'll be visiting a bunch of our programs for 3 or 4 days, and then I'll do the same thing in the fall. Often I'll try to go for the launch of a brand new program to support that if I can, but a lot of times you have new programs launching at the same time in multiple cities.
Okay. Now, what is a mistake that people make when they think about their life after work that would be helpful for you to talk about so listeners can maybe avoid that from happening?
Yeah. It's going to sound, I think people might say, oh, that's not me, but I love my dad, but he's not doing retirement right. He is clinging to his job of, I was an accountant and I was into financial stuff. And that continues to be his only real interest. So he spends his days in a chair watching MSNBC and trading stocks on his iPad and has not expanded his interests to other things and has not said, all right, instead he could say, this is a time where I need to maybe take better care of my health because my body's just getting older. So I need to double up on the physical movement activities, time to take on new hobbies or to stimulate my mind. And I compare him and I look at my mom, and my mom is like a dynamo, and she's they moved to a 55 plus community, and it's much older than 55. It's on the later side of things. My mom is out there helping people who are essentially in hospice in her community in the building. People die. She's out there helping clean out their apartments, helping figure out all the kind of end of life stuff with the family. And she's in the water aerobic. Now that said, I'm not so. People might say, "Oh, that's so extreme the way you painted your dad," but it's true. It's unfortunately true. The best thing that happened to both of them was about 6 years ago. They moved into this 55 plus community, and then just having all these activities and people has been helpful. And so my dad, even though he isn't quite like my mom, but he does do the poker night with the guys on Mondays. So he does get out there and does some things, but it's a little bit less. Because before they moved into that, we're from Chicago. They moved to San Diego, California, where I am, to help me with and to be close to the grandkids, my kids. But my kids, they're in college now, and as they got older, even in high school, they didn't want to hang out with grandma and grandpa all the time. It was great when they were little, And then grandma and grandpa are like, well, we don't see your kids very often. And Andrew, you're traveling all the time for work. And we're like twiddling our thumbs and we don't know anyone in San Diego, right? So they became quite bored. And that's when I think the loneliness started to set in. You know, I got more concerned about my parents. So them moving into this finding community. So I think underestimating the importance of community in your life at any point. Because community, you find it in work. I mean, it's like, yeah, work seems like a drag, but it also provides community. So underestimate that, and I think community should be first and foremost on people's minds once they get out of work.
Yeah, and you're right, because I think that we go to work, there's people that we work with, we don't realize how much we lean on them, how much we have those conversations, sometimes pretty meaningful conversations. We might share stuff with a work friend that we wouldn't necessarily share with a really close friend, just because of the different environment or different atmosphere. And having that and thinking about that as a community, and then when you retire, not that you're cut off, but you lose that community, those people. And yeah, you hang out, you might, especially early on, you'll connect with them.
Yeah.
But as time goes, those connections will get less and less, just because that's how things work. And so having a community, whether that's a building that you move into to have that community, or you go out on your own and you connect with the people that are like you find people that are like you. You've talked about finding your tribe. You find your tribe, you connect with those people, and then you have those people. Those are your people. You hang out with them, you talk to them, you have regular coffee meetings with them, or game nights, or however you like to spend your time, but you build that community with them. And sometimes we are lucky enough to find ourselves where we can just step into another community. And other times we might have to realize that there's some people here that probably could connect and maybe would, but there's nobody that's doing the connection. So we might have to be that person that makes those connections ourselves in order to build that community.
And it's subtle things. It's little things. You don't think, oh, I'm losing community. I don't think anyone thinks about it in these terms,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's you and I having this sort of philosophical discussion about this. But like my dad, it started very simple. He just said, "Oh, it's getting harder for me to walk, so I'm just not going to go to church anymore." And but it's like, no, you're losing a community. You're losing that. He's like, I can see it on my iPad. I watched the church service, and my mom, she still goes, but it's the people, and she's volunteering at the Sunday school with the kids and the snack time. These communities exist in our lives everywhere. I think we just need to kind of be alert to them happening and realize that they are important, whether we realize it or not.
Andrew, what is the intersection between purpose, identity, and community? We talked a lot about community today. Purpose, identity, and community. And why do you think those matter more than whatever destination you decide to land in?
Right. Yeah, that intersection, it's sort of the bullseye, right? The center of the bullseye. And because you could have a group of people in Paris just being there, right? But without any purpose, right? So there's nothing that unifies them. They're just a bunch of people in a hotel room or in a hotel building in Paris, right? They're going to just do their own thing. There's nothing there. That's not a community, right? A community has certain things, and every community has certain things in common, right? There's a shared purpose of why we're here, but also community, as we define it, means we're looking out for each other, right? It's like there could be a fan club of like Taylor Swift fans, right? Doesn't mean we're going to look out for each other. It just means we all like Taylor Swift. But in a real community, that means you're also looking out for each other. And then a community usually has shared symbols, shared language, right? Traditions that we observe that bind us together. And so the having that shared purpose, and in our case, it's a love of cultural appreciation and therefore cultural immersion to get that, right? That you need that's our mission. Now everyone's immersion looks a little different, but then we can have rituals and traditions and language to bind us together, and that's what forms community, and that's what forms your tribe. And then you realize, see, in every community too, there's um, like concentric circles, right? And if a community stands for something, um, then it attracts people who come to try to check it out. And you've got people who step into the outermost circle. Is this for me? And so people come to us, for example, like, what is this Tuesday lunch club tradition? And what is this like community thing? And oh, I don't. Some people are like, I don't like this. I want to go back to the Four Seasons. I was very comfortable in the Four Seasons. This I have to go buy my own toilet paper when I'm on vacation. I don't like this, right? And then other people get in and they love it, and then they move to the center of the circle. And then within our circles, we have our evangelists who are telling the world about the good life abroad. We have our helper types who help the people on the margin say, hey, let me explain to you how this works. You know, you don't have to do this or that, and then that guides people in. And so when you identify something as a community, right, you realize that it should have these components, and then it's your job to then foster it. And that's what our community managers do so well. They literally, part of their job is to identify who's the role, what are the roles within this community. Each group is different every month, right? It's like, John, he's our storyteller. He's taking pictures of everything we do, and then he's sharing it on WhatsApp, and like maybe he'll post on our Facebook group. He's our storyteller. Oh, she's the helper. She's bringing people in, and if someone's sick, often, and it happens, people get cold, get the flu. There's the community steps in. Are you okay, Mary? Can we bring you something? If you're, a solo traveler, for example, and that is it. That's the magic, right? When you create this amazing thing, but you don't have it without the shared purpose, and that without people identifying, saying, "Yeah, I'm proud to wear that pin of that community. Like I'm one of those." In order to get there, you've got to be clear about what you stand for.
I really, really like that explanation of what community is. That was really, really good. Thank you for that. I'm going to bring that with me because I like that so much. The idea of the concentric circles, and then you have the people that are on the outside of the fence, sort of say, looking in, hey, is that something I want to do? And they find the gate, they walk in, and they can see if they want to continue on. But then the part that often isn't talked about are the people that are going out, that are collecting the new people and bringing them in, the people that are being, that are evangelizing for whatever that cause is. That is really interesting. And then moving closer and closer to whatever that shared interest is, gives them the community. That is the connection, that they all want to move into that. And then they also, the connections about the rituals is the word that we're going to use here, because I think it's fitting, but that's a weird word to say as well. But the things that you do together as a team, as a community, helps to build those connections. You get to meet new people, but that all of that is predicated on you being able to be that type of person that is inside at least one of the circles, and not on the outside looking over the. I think about like Wilson from Home Improvement, looking over the gate, and you can just see just his eyes. But once you move into that, and then you move closer and closer, so that is really good. I thank you for that, Andrew. Let's say somebody wants to start living more intentional, right? Because all of this whole talk today, we talked about traveling, we talked about all these things, but we also talked about living more intentional. And as you're traveling, it's not just you're hanging out there for 2 weeks or something. You're staying for, you're getting an apartment there. You're essentially living in this place for that time. There's some intentionality to that. There's intentionality to the connection we talked about with building a community. So if somebody wanted to start living more intentionally today, what would be a step in that direction, a step closer to the middle of that circle that you would recommend for them?
The first thing, and I do this on a pretty regular basis, is just asking myself, is the thing I'm doing today bringing me joy or not? And if it's bringing me joy, okay, how can I do more of that? And if it's not bringing me joy, why am I doing this? And can I be doing something else? That's It's very simple. And I do this especially at the beginning of every year. Some people do like the New Year's resolution. I just sort of do a very simple, like, what were the things that brought me the most joy this past year? And can I do more of those things? And lasting joy. And I think doing it at an annual basis or even a semi, it's like the little dopamine hits don't count, right? It's like, oh, I like last night, had this great meal, too much wine. It was, but like, no, no. What do you remember at the end of the year? Like, oh no, like that. Maybe it was that family reunion, or maybe it was that meal because it was an amazing conversation with beautiful friends that you value so much. And you're like, you know what? I want to spend more time with those people, and that's going to be my. That was me in January, which is I want to have more dinner parties because I don't see my friends as much as I'd like to see them. And so what can I do? And then I combine that with my love of food. And so I'm going to start cooking more. I'm going to learn to make more dishes, and that'll be a great way to entice more friends to come over and have dinner. We'll have more dinner parties. So
Well, Andrew, I gotta say thank you. Thank you so much because your work helps to remind us that life isn't a checklist. It's an unfolding story that's shaped by intention, connections, and probably most of all, curiosity. Today, today we talked about why slowing down and living deeply, even temporarily, even in a new place, can reveal truths about ourselves that short vacations or our routine living never do. And the biggest message is purpose doesn't wait until later. You have to start designing that now. So whether you're approaching a new chapter or simply yearning for more meaning in your daily life, the principle of intentional living, community, and openness to that experience are universal. And Andrew, as we're getting ready to wrap up here, do you have any key thoughts or final takeaways for the listeners? And if they wanted to learn more about you and your program, what would be the best way for them to do that?
well, I'm coming at this from the travel perspective, and I would say exactly what you were saying is when you travel with intention, and it starts with having some curiosity. I find that the people with the best travel experiences have some curiosity, some itch they're trying to scratch, and that creates an intention of why they're going versus just doing the checklist travel, which is fine. There's a time and a place for that. But intentional travel is so much more rewarding. So I encourage everyone watching this to think about what do they want to get out of their next trip instead of just going through the motions of, well, now that I'm retired, I have to go on another trip and fill my time. Um, and so whether that's with the Good Life Abroad or any way you travel, it's it's something I encourage you to do. But if you're interested in getting in touch with us, our website is thegoodlifeabroad.com. And if you wanted to reach me, it's very easy. I'm Andrew at thegoodlifeabroad.com.
And listeners, if this conversation stirred you, share it, subscribe, and visit theprestigiousLabs.com for more episodes that help you leave your life with clarity and courage. Until next time, keep living with purpose.